computer. Recording in progress. And literally, as I say that, the tradies next door are grinding some steel. It's just, and that's not a euphemism, Tony, just so you know, that's not a cultural difference. I literally mean there are people next door working on things. Anyway, it is a beautiful day. Just doing the standard, is this thing actually working? Can people hear us? And all that groovy stuff. I wonder who's going to be on pole position. You know who I'm most excited for this season, in this incredible season coming up, Tony? I'm more excited for Meridel than anybody, because she is going to have an elevator that is going to be world-class this year. She's going to be seeing the most improvements.
She's going to have a choice between what elevator to ride.
Wow. So there's going to be multiple.
Yeah. I was just over there the other day, and I think there's the towers for 2 more were going up. So there'd be 3 fairly close to each other.
Wow. That's one thing, Tony, that you can certainly never say about Knoxville Raceway, is they don't continue to invest back in the facility. Like it's incredible, isn't it? Every year there's something that they've invested back in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they've poured more concrete around the ticket office, kind of where we did our pre-race show at the Nationals. That whole area now is concrete. So that's been an addition. Obviously, the elevators going in is an addition. Impact signs put a lighted Knoxville Raceway across the front of the suites, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's just lots of other things going on, lots of little things happening, and yeah, it's pretty cool that the Fair Board has the wherewithal to keep reinvesting in the facility, right, and keeping it world class. And because there's an expectation, I think, that fans have when they come to Knoxville, that there's certain things that they want. And so the Fair Board's usually pretty good about making sure those things happen.
Just as we start talking, there's like all that grinding and stuff going on next door. I should rephrase that. There's tradesmen working on steel.
Kind of plays argument.
That just came out so wrong. Meridel is saying good evening. So she always watches all of these. So I want to say a big shout out. Meridel is part of the fabric of the raceway, isn't she, Tony?
Yeah, she's great. I've known Meridel a long time, back when I raced at Oski. Even before I raced, her brother was the promoter at Southern Iowa Speedway, and then Meridel was there, and of course Meridel's husband and sons all raced there, and were highly successful, and I believe they're in the Southern Iowa Speedway Hall of Fame now. But then we got lucky when Meridel came to Knoxville, and she, she's great, and she blended right in, and she's family to all of us, and she's tried to retire a few times, but luckily she gets bored and tells Wendell that she's coming back to fill in, and we just don't want to let her go.
She's the one that has the most. If you think you've got ups and downs in your job on race night, Tony, she has it. Cindy Herway Rootkin is saying hello. So hello to Cindy. I'm sure she's saying, hey, Tony.
Yep, you bet. That's Herway's daughter,
Absolutely. Shane Dowie is loud and clear in Rhode Island. Wow, we're all the way we're number 1 in Rhode Island today, Tony. Wow.
Wow, how about that?
Austin,
that's cool.
He's probably already wearing his fire suit in readiness, because of course we're getting closer and closer to the big kickoff for this weekend's Knoxville Raceway. And thanks to our friend, of course, Craig Ford. He is the traditional sponsor of the opening night, isn't he, with Pella Motors and Craig Ford, Tony?
Yeah, he is. And ever since he came on board, which is, man, I've lost track of how many years it's been now, but Craig's a great sponsor. He, aside from just sponsoring a night, the amount of things that he does for big events and for when we have VIPs coming there, and there's not many times someone asks him for something where he says something other than, I mean, he's always saying yes. He's always helping out, lending cars, bringing vehicles, sponsors a few guys now between a couple of his dealerships. And I looked at his dealership like it was right there, but it's kind of that direction in Pella here. But he's great. And, if you have any questions about Jeeps and rock climbing, he's your guy.
Oh,
but don't count on him to take you for a steak dinner at the country club.
That cuts deep, doesn't it, Tony? He took my boys and I, Connor, Riley, and Darcy off-roading And boy, he is just so passionate about that. And it's not, when you think about off-roading, like you take a picnic basket and it's a really, nice, fun, casual ride through the woods. Man, like it's like straight up stuff, and all of his kids can do it. He's epic at it.
Well, if you know Craig Ford at all, he doesn't just do something, right? Like it's all in plus some. And but that's cool. I'm happy for him, and when people can do those kind of things and enjoy it. And I just keep telling him, instead of that goofy hat he wears, he needs to start wearing a helmet. Because one of these times he's going to flip one of them things, and I hate for him to get knocked in the head, because he went to Wartburg, so he's a little bit loose in the brains to start with. He didn't go to Central, but anyway, now we love Craig, and he does a lot for a lot of people, so we're really thankful for that.
For a split second there, I was going to make a movie reference, and then I realized there's just no
Don't
point.
waste it on me.
Tony, apart from I think Gran Torino, the Clint Eastwood movie, Tony is not what you would call a movie buff. He just if anybody wants to ask some questions of Tony, by the way, at this point, just throw them up in the mix. So what you're saying is that Craig Ford should wear a helmet instead of a hat. Could I tie that back in at all to a race suit in analogy at all in drag racing?
No, you don't need to talk about race suits. I had to buy the race car. I can't afford the race suit. Isn't that how it works when you're a racer?
I told you, if you're going to continue that pinball career, that emerging pinball career, you got to protect. Anyway,
yeah.
The weather looks amazing there. What a week to lead up to Knoxville.
It's absolutely beautiful here. It's, I don't know, it's 70 something here today. I'm sitting in the backyard. My neighbor's out there working in his backyard, but it's just a beautiful day here in Pella. And but I hope that we can sustain it. It's supposed to get cold come the weekend. So we've had that problem. We've lost some opening nights to rain, but we've lost some to cold weather too. So I hope that we don't have that, but I think it's supposed to get down in the 50s. So fingers crossed that they're wrong, and that we can kick off the season this weekend.
One of the things that I noticed the most about the difference between America and Australia is backyard fences. Every Australian backyard has a fence that separates your neighbors. It is very rare for me. Yeah, I know when I go to Skip's house, and you walk through the back there, I think North Roche, I think is the name of his street, and you walk out the back, and it's like everybody has a communal backyard. It's just not a thing to fence off backyards there much, is it?
Some people that have little kids sometimes will fence off their backyard, or some people with pets will do that. But I'm on my street here. I don't think there's a fence on a yard here, and it's funny because my neighbor who's sitting outside right over there, he mows his yard, keeps his yard really nice, and a lot of times he'll mow a little more of mine than his to keep it nice, or we'll drive across each other's yard to get into the backyard or something. It's wide open and it's nice, and it's just a nice big green space. I don't use my backyard much, but fences aren't a big deal like they are.
As long as neighbors don't catch you out the back mowing in a banana hammock, on a warm summer's afternoon.
Trust me, that won't be a problem.
Tony, 28 years, mate. And the really cool thing is that your career with announcing happened as a really happy accident, didn't it? In like a go-kart event or something like that, where the regular announcer wasn't there that day.
Yeah, so I was down at Eddyville Dragway, and at the end of the drag strip, they had a circle track, which is now the return road at the drag strip, which you saw when you were there.
Yeah,
but they race legend go-karts on Friday nights, and I was down there. My mom and my stepdad were working down at the track, and I was sitting at the top of the grandstands, and a guy by the name of Mick Trier, who is Tim Trier's older brother. I think he was older. Either way, it's Tim Trier's brother. Was the promoter at the time, and I've known the Trier family since I was a little kid. I was sitting there, and he came up the bleachers, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Just hanging out." And he's like, "You're announcing tonight. My announcer's not coming." And this is like minutes before like the first race is coming on the track, and they handed me a sheet with like a whole bunch of numbers on it and some guy's name, right? So it's like Jerry Jones, 26, Wade Onger, 15 or 13 in your case. But so that's how it started, and it was fun. I I thought, oh boy, here we go. But the other saving grace was there probably wasn't 25 people in the grandstands listening. It was
Would have felt like
parents.
there was thousands though. I bet it
Uh,
felt like it was, it
dude,
could have been huge.
yeah, I was super nervous, but so I did that, and then didn't announce for a while, and then I've told you the story about Jack Herway and I, and how it all started at Knoxville. And I had done some other stuff in between there. I did some figure eight races for Tim Trier over at Indianola, and
Figure eight.
some figure eights.
What's it like to announce figure eight racing?
It's crazy because people come there, they want to see them crash in the intersection, and you got to really pay attention to who's leading. And so, but when you're a young announcer and you don't know any better, it's pretty fun. You just get up there and keep your eye on the leader, and they just about crashed, or it's kind of like a truck pull. Will she go or will she blow? And but it was fun, and when you're starting out, and I tell a lot of people that ask me about how to start announcing, you got to do those things, right? You got to do some of those figure eights and enduros and some of these things. I've announced demo derbies, and I've announced tractor pulls at the local JC track here in town, and but you got to do those things when you're young and starting out as an announcer and don't have any experience, and pretty soon, you hope somebody hears you and you get a chance to go do something else.
Did you ever see a point where that you would be announcing at Knoxville? Like, was it could you see that on the now? Oh, okay, I've done like a kart race in front of 25 kids. I think I want to go and announce at the sprint car capital of the world.
No, because my plan was always I was going to be a race car driver, and my dream in life was to show up to my first class reunion with an outlaw hauler, and the way it turned out, I didn't go to my first class reunion, and I never got an outlaw hauler. So neither one of those things happened. But no, I was, of course, I knew Tim Trier from when I was a little kid, because Tim was part of the drag racing scene here for a lot of years too, down in Eddyville. And then I met Jack through his daughters, because we sat next to each other at the races, and then just got to know Jack over the course of time, but never really sought out to be an announcer, quite honestly. I wanted to be a race car driver, and I raced a hobby stock and a go-kart. And if you think I'm bad as an announcer, you should have saw me as a race car driver. It was worse. And so anyway, it just worked out. And I've told you the story about Jack telling me that you don't have, I always told Jack you didn't have to be very smart to be an announcer, you just had to like to hear yourself talk. And then he reminded me one night that I wasn't very smart, and he knew that I'd like to hear myself talk, so I'd be a perfect fit. And that's kind of how it started. And there's some other details in there, but that's the long and the short of how I got my first chance on the microphone at Knoxville. And man, this Saturday night will be the start of 28 years. I never would have told you, even when I started announcing in Knoxville, that I would do it this long. Been incredibly lucky, incredibly blessed to get to do Knoxville, and then all the other things that has parlayed into, right? We've talked about it a lot, doing from live TV to announcing in Australia, and all of those things that someday when you and I are sitting at the old folks home, can't get out of our wheelchairs, those will be the stories we're telling.
There's this is such a palpable magic about that place. When you drive down North Lincoln and you start to see that flag and that enormous grandstand. And when I drove with Riley, Connor, and Darcy into Knoxville, back in October, and we were driving in where you come past the cemetery on the right-hand side there from Des Moines. And I said, see that? And they just went quiet because they never seen a grandstand that big. Like the bleachers, it's such an imposing, coliseum. And it starts with that. And then when you turn left, just right there at scoot around, and you start heading down, and you see Dingus on the right, and then you see that flag. It's hard to put it in words how your heart just starts to race,
Yeah, for me, it was always when you came in from the north, like from Monroe, when you came in and you saw the Hall of Fame first. And now that the VA campus is gone, when you come in the way you've just described, the back of the grandstands is almost imposing. It's so big. And when you see that, it's like, ooh, you kind of get goosebumps, like, I'm here. I'm within, throwing a rock distance of the Knoxville Raceway. And when you've never been there before, it's unbelievably impressive. And even for me still, I had to go over last weekend and do a couple things at the track. And it still gives me, I don't necessarily get the goosebumps like I used to get, but there's still just this presence of, wow, I'm getting ready to announce another season at the most famous dirt track in all of sprint car racing, and that's pretty cool.
Why is it the most famous sprint car track in all of racing?
Because I think it's the hardest place to win. It's very fast. It's hard on equipment, and I don't mean hard on it in a negative way. It just, the racetrack expects a lot of the engine, expects a lot of the chassis, expects a lot of the driver. So it's hard on equipment. It takes some skill to go that fast for that many laps. And everybody wants to win there. And so when you look back at all the people that have won there, to put your name in that list of drivers that maybe have only ever won one race there, it's pretty cool. It's not like, a lot of people can go buy a pass to go play golf at the most famous PGA golf course in the world, but not everybody can buy a sprint car and go race at Knoxville competitively. So for me, I look at it that it's an elite group of folks.
Yeah, there's an intimacy about it, and yet there's a vast, just you can see forever kind of deal. Like, you go from in that tower and you are it's probably the furthest from the racing surface in any speedway that I've ever been to where your announcing booth is from. So
yeah,
it's a long way from what's actually going on down there. It's almost like a drone view of what you see. There's no other way around that. Is that the perfect place to be? I mean, you're a long way from the top, but you've got monitors to work with, right?
Yeah, you're right. It is the perfect view, but when I started announcing, the grandstands were, I think, 20 rows less than they are today. And there was a skybox that wasn't much bigger than the deck I'm sitting on right now. And then we announced from outside of that. The fans were like, I could tap Mark and Rhonda Knopf on the top of the head. They sat so close, right? And when it rained, we had to cover our stuff up. And then when they expanded the bleachers and put the new suites up, we went inside, which was great, but it brought a different element to announcing. And because we lost the sound, we lost the smell, we lost all the things that the fans are experiencing, when the wind is out of the north and the track's a little bit dry, and we don't get that upstairs. And so it was different. And so, as sometimes keeping that excitement level up, right, is a challenge. But when you're standing outside and the place is full, 30,000 people there on Saturday night of the Knoxville Nationals, and the guy down in front of you is smoking a cigarette and it's blowing in your face, that's a lot different. You get pumped up. I get fired up just thinking about that now. Then when we go upstairs and it's a little bit more sanitary in the press box, and it's just different. It's not bad. I love it. I wouldn't want to give it up, but it's just different than what we started out doing there back in the day.
My friend Mark Baker is tuned in from South Australia. Mark is going to be making his Knoxville Nationals debut. He's coming across as a spectator for the first time, and I'm so excited for him. I love seeing people that are experiencing it for the first time, Tony, that they just get this, oh, where do I stay and what do I do? And I go, wow, that's not just like booking to go to a college football game. This is like, accommodation is something you need to put a lot of thought into. You need to source, even get in touch with the track. The city of Knoxville as well can sometimes direct you for, people around to be able to do that stuff as well. But for all of that distance that you are from, Tony, when we come down onto the floor, particularly in that the Avenue of Champions, you and I marvel at it every time. It could literally take us an hour to walk from that little barbecue hospitality area there to get to turn 4, because the people, they're just so engaging, aren't they? Everybody wants to say hi or have a chat, and it's an incredible, intimate experience in a sea of tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, it is. And it's neat because you intersect with a group of folks that that may have been there back when the bleachers were wooden. And people were camping right along that avenue there. And there was a jukebox, and there was beer diving in plastic swimming pools after the last checkered flag of the night, all the way to people that you just described that are making their first visit there. And they're just in awe of the size of the bleachers and all the things. So that's one of my favorite things. And, when I was in Australia, one of the things I went home with was just how many people are in awe of Knoxville that have never been there. The amount of people that said to me, just describe what it's like to be there. That's hard for me, because even though I'm there every week, it's like, I don't know, where do I start? It's a place you got to go. And so when I hear people are coming for the first time, I love that, because even if you only ever get to go one time in your life, as a race fan, it will be worth every penny you spend. You'll make memories that'll last a lifetime, and you're probably going to see history made.
It's almost a shame it's not practical to do a tour, Tony, of that upper deck, so people can come in and experience your view.
Yeah, you and I would be busy guys. We'd have to get up in the morning, first of all. That'd be the first thing. We'd be busy guys all day long trying to get those tours done, because I think a lot of people would love to see that, because the view is spectacular. But now with the Brian Clausen Towers over in turn number 2, you can get a very similar perspective, from going up on top of the deck there and seeing what it's like over there. So that's been a nice addition for fans to get to go over and just get a different look at the racetrack, than what you might get sitting in the grandstands.
It would be easy, Tony, to be, well, we're Knoxville Raceway, we're the sprint car capital of the world, we have the history, we have the granddaddy of them all, to go, that's enough. But last year we formed a little, special task committee to even look at increasing the fan experience. The whole focus was, we don't want to be just laying back and going, well, we're the shizzle, come if you want to. It's like, we have to be better every year. And that's something I was really proud of, that this, your team, with Jason and Jim Udemark and all those amazing people that we had, Judd Nelson and Jamie Ball, giving that race perspective, and we had a real emphasis on making this better in any way we could.
Well, and first of all, it was our team, because you're part of our team, so it wasn't my team or anybody like that. I mean, that all worked because we all bring something uniquely different to the table, and I think people look at, every racetrack's trying to pay more money, and everybody wants to say they have the richest race in sprint car racing. And there's all these things going on. And I commend all those tracks that are doing that, because in today's world, paying more money without raising ticket prices through the roof is a challenge, because the cost of running a racetrack keeps going up. But what I always find is so impressive about Knoxville is we have the biggest purse in sprint car racing, and we've had it for probably close to 40 or 45 years, consistently the largest overall purse in sprint car racing. And to me, that's what's most impressive. It's not whether or not we pay $1 million to win, which is super cool. Maybe someday we can, but what I think is more important and even cooler is the guy that wins or finishes in the first non-transfer spot in the B main, probably going to make more money that night than if he'd won a feature at a local racetrack somewhere. That's pretty cool. And so outside of that, we have to get creative about how do we engage fans, right? Because as we bring in younger fans, like your boys, for example, they want different things than old timers like me and you do. They want to see different things. They want to experience things differently. They want to experience more things on their phone. And so it was really cool to get all these people that you mentioned in a room and just throw a bunch of ideas on the table. That there's no bad ideas, just bring an idea. And I think, we hit it out of the park with the post-race activities in the show barn, where the fans could go and watch and listen to the victory lane, or the interviews with the drivers afterwards. That was huge. There was a lot of things that happened, I think, during the week that were huge hits. And we're going to do that again. We're going to have those meetings coming up here very soon to try to figure out, okay, what worked? What do we want to do again? What don't we want to do? What do we want to change? Because we owe that to the fans. And I think that's one of the things that when you look at what happens at Knoxville with improvements and all those kind of things, it's not because they're looking for a place to go spend money. It's because they feel like they owe it to the fans to keep making that place better. And that starts with, John McCoy and everybody working on making sure the rules are right, and making sure the competition is fair, to the payouts, to, people won't notice this, but they spent a lot, and I mean a lot of money on the approach getting into the racetrack from outside of turn 4, because rigs were dragging the bottom, and these rigs aren't getting any cheaper. And two things were happening. Some of them were getting stuck, and some of them were getting tore up pretty bad. And Knoxville doesn't want that. So they went in there, had somebody come in, survey the grade, and redid that whole approach going into the racetrack. So it's little things like that that I think is really cool, and what really sets Knoxville apart from all these other racetracks.
And Tony, it's important to note as well that Knoxville Raceway is not a private promoter. Okay, it doesn't own the venue, right? It's a fairground, effectively.
Yeah.
Like it's effectively a fairground that a fair board, which is divided up, I think, into almost 3 sections, that is fairground related, fair board related. Then there's a race committee board.
Yep.
So it's you can invest as much as you like in that venue, but the raceway doesn't own the raceway.
Yeah, and I think if you got right down to it, the fair is probably a bigger priority, the county fair, because it is county owned. It's a county owned facility run by fair board members, 24 of them, like you just described. So the county fair is a big deal. The 4-H kids are a big deal. When I was over there last week, they were getting one of the barns ready because some of the first events for qualifying for some of these statewide agriculture shows were happening, and so it's not one person that owns the place and making all these decisions. It's a board that speaks on behalf of the county and the residents of Marion County, and we're just lucky enough to have a badass racetrack sitting right in the middle of it.
This is a question that is a difficult one, but I'll ask it anyway. Is the Jason Johnson win your greatest moment you've called at that venue?
Yeah, I probably. The other night when they were playing it on Dirt Vision a couple times, it got me right here. How you swallowed the golf ball moment. Not because of necessarily what happened in the end, which is devastating, but it was such a powerful win with a guy that's tried so hard with his own team and all those things. And as I listened to that call of Johnny and I back and forth, and getting to call him across the line as a Knoxville Nationals champion, it's like winning the Knoxville Nationals the first time. You only get one chance to do that the first time. And so of all of my accomplishments that I consider accomplishments at Knoxville, it's a listing of those kind of things. The Jason Johnson win, the Brian Burkhoff pass and Scott Bloomquist on the top of turn 3, nearly driving it through the wall to win the late model nationals. It's all of these drivers that are winning their first feature at Knoxville. I do a little thing. Not a lot of people know this, but if somebody's going to win a feature, and I've recognized that it's their first win, I'll record, and if I'm announcing the race, I'll record the last 2 laps, and then I send that to them, because I want them to hear what they know what it felt like to win at Knoxville the first time, but I want them to hear what it's like to win at Knoxville the first time, right? I can't give anything to a race car driver other than the ability to call a race. And some would question my ability to do that, but my gift to them is when I get to call somebody's first victory, I send them that recording. And man, Wade, the amount of people that have called me or reached out to me after I've done that, and the amount of appreciation they have, it's such a small thing, right? And but it means so much to them.
And people do place more emphasis on that stuff, Tony, than you realize. It's like Brian Brown keeps the helmet that you got him, in private place with a phenomenal array of helmets. I mean, that guy, it would be easy to say, I don't like Brown, because fans do that. They're divided in their loyalties. But when you go to his shop and you realize what this guy has achieved in terms of his corporate backing and building an empire that is Brian Brown Racing, you can't help but admire that 21 guy. Like, wow.
Brian and I's relationship started out, as I remember, when we were both kids. running around the racetrack. Ryan and I didn't hang out or anything like that, but I knew who he was. And then when he started helping Danny, obviously I got to know him a little bit more. But people can say what they want, and I'm okay with it. But if you want to learn how to build a race team, if you want to learn how to attract sponsors, and most importantly, if you want to learn how to keep them, you need not look any further than Brian Brown. And he's done a wonderful job of building a powerful race team. His race team has depth far beyond what a lot of people realize. And he gets criticized a lot because he doesn't race as much as some people think, but that's okay. He's a smart racer. He takes very good care of his guys. And that's one of the things that I respect about him is it'd be real easy for him to take that money and run, right? But he takes really good care of his guys. And that's why a guy like Chad, his crew chief, they've been together so long. Yeah, they had a little Splitsville in between. But, you don't build those kind of relationships if you're not taking care of people. And that's what he does, from his sponsors to his crew members to the fans. I always chuckle. People really, there are people that either like Brian Brown or don't like Brian Brown, right? Same way with Terry McCarl. I mean, I love that guy. And if people knew Terry McCarl on a friend-to-friend level, they'd never say a bad word about him, because when it comes to taking care of kids and little race fans, there's nobody, I could name off a handful of guys that did it really well, but those two guys would be in that list of names, because one of the things they do so well is their ability to interact with kids and take care of them. It's impressive.
When hello, Doug Clark, the legendary Doug Clark. He's tuned in. What an amazing guy. There's another family I want to talk about later on. I went to dinner with Brian and Heather in Kansas City last year, and just had the two of them. And her story, my goodness, as a mom, very, very young mom, bringing up her beautiful daughter, and people might just see this well put together, beautiful blonde, serving t-shirts and stuff in that trailer, but Heather, man, she's almost in that car with him. And I think that people don't realize as well, a lot of times when you're talking to a lady in the t-shirt trailer, that's actually Mrs. Brown, actually, Mrs. Hordenshield, in terms of, Sheldon and things like that. So there's a family engagement that is very, very hard to fully understand until you spend some one-on-one time with people.
Well, look, if you're going to be in that family, you've got to be more than just a t-shirt seller, right? Marrying into a family with Danny Lasowski and Brian Brown and George Lasowski, and I mean that's a tall billing right there, right? And so what I always love is when you see Heather, she's hard on Brian. Don't kid yourself. She wants to win as bad as he does, and she doesn't cut him a lot of slack, and that's good, because he needs to be kept on a tight leash. But she's a savvy business person. She, in addition to helping Brian with the race team, she's got her hair salon, and she had a clothing store, and she's a grandma now, and she's got a lot on her plate too. And but you're right, Wade, they just do it right, and they do it well. And when you get them away from the racetrack, they're just incredibly fun people to be around. And Brian's a big Kansas City Chiefs fan, and I love it when he talks about it on Dirt Vision and stuff, and the crowd boos him and stuff like that. It's just funny to see that, because if you just walked up to Brian and met him, you'd think he didn't know anything else besides how to drive a race car, but he's pretty knowledgeable in a lot of stick and ball sport things and all that kind of stuff. So he's just a good guy, and take that for what it's worth. But if people haven't given him a chance, they really ought to.
Yeah, watching the way he works his corporates, when they have that big luncheon at the raceway and stuff, and he's very affable, and he follows up, and he's a very good salesman. On the other end of the corporate street is Bobby Meinzer, who is tuned in right now, the guy I call the Real 15. And what an incredible thing for Bobby. He never really had the funding to run his own deal, and now he's got his boy. But they just somehow find the money. And sprint car racing is a sport that will get deep inside you. And it really doesn't matter whether it's door slammer, top fuel, pro stock motorcycle, late models, IMCA modifieds. Doesn't matter. The passion is the same. The vehicle might be different, but the passion is the same. And I got to meet the Mindsters through the Clarks. And if you could ever go out to the northern campgrounds and hang out with those guys around lunchtime on race day, some of the best banter in all of sprint car racing.
Yeah, and you know, Bobby and his team is an interesting comparison to Brian. You know, very different teams, structured very different. But what I feel like, as somebody who's watched Bobby race, and you know, watching now his son get involved, what Bobby has done right with his wife is they've made that all about their family, and it's all about having fun, and it's all about together and doing it together. And you know, Bobby sat out a lot of nights so that Cole could race. And Bob won a chassis at the points banquet one season, and I said, "Well, which one do you get this?" And he pointed at Cole, you know. And but that's why it works for them, is because they do it as a family, they win as a family, and if they don't win, that's okay as long as they're having fun. And I think that's what attracts his sponsors to him, is that they know that they can show up. There's not going to be any fighting and hollering and swearing, while they might, you know, obviously get competitive, but they have a great family culture there. And two very different, you know, programs, but both I would consider equally as successful in that way.
The breakfast every year at the Classic, Tony, gets bigger and bigger. Excuse me, they keep changing the venue. I feel like down the road, that might be the same way with Breakfast with Champions. Doug Clark, he came down to the Classic and he saw that and he immediately said, we need that at Knoxville. To his great credit, he went back and what is this, our third year coming up of doing that?
Yeah.
And that was for you and I to be able to, at last, I mean, already we've had two knockouts, right? The first one was Sammy Swindell playing drums will stay with me for forever. You know,
I haven't gotten to take it.
Just, you know, that first one was phenomenal. And then last year, for you to be able to sit up there with your hero, Rocky Hodges, and for us to have you know, Rico sitting there and soaking all that in, and Van May, I identify as a Texan.
You know, you know, as you know, the Rocky thing was a big deal for me, but watching Rico sit amongst those guys and hear the stories and watching his eyes get bigger and bigger just reminds me how much of a fan Rico is and how important the history of the sport is to him. And then listening to Van May talk, and when he, you know, there was a couple times when people would clap and cheer and stuff, and the look on his face when he finally realized that these people are here to see me, right? And his importance and his impact on the sport. I think that's what's been so cool about the breakfast here. The breakfast in Australia blew my expectations away. You know, not knowing what to expect, but hearing you talk about it, that was so huge. And I'll never, and I've wrote this on Facebook a couple times, but hearing the amount of applause and appreciation and respect people have when Brooke Tatnall walks in a room is unmatched. It's unmatched. And that was so cool for me to see, because like I told you, one of the things I was most excited about was getting to announce these guys in their home country, right? Because I've announced them here, but getting to do it there, but then seeing how the fans react to Brooke, it was awesome. Like, I get goosebumps now thinking about it. It was that cool.
Doug is telling me here, he's saying 3 names. This is going to be a big one this year. Wow. Hewitt, Unger, and Schumann.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, wow.
Wow. That's going to be spectacular. I think back to the interview you did with Ron Schumann here a couple of years ago. The stories that guy has, I can't wait for that. Wow. That's going to be great. Rick Unger, one of the first little diecast cars when they started making diecast cars, was one of his. And what more can you say about Jack Hewitt, right? That's going to be good stuff. People will, when the tickets go on sale, those will sell out faster than the Saturday night of the Nationals. I can't see it. I'm sorry.
Let me just take this out. This is one of my favorite moments that I got to experience, the road to Knoxville a couple of years back when I did that trip with my dad. That is Leland McSpadden and the shoe in a restaurant, in a steakhouse in Arizona. And, Tony, I said to them afterwards, thank you so much for doing this today. And Ron Schumann said, thank you for remembering us. And I was like, are you kidding? You're the Flying Shoe and you're the Tempe Tornado. Like, you guys are gods to us. But life goes on very quickly, Tony. And these days, everyone's about the next big thing. But for you and I want to look back at all those big things that got us to the next big thing.
Yeah, it's funny to me to hear that, and I remember him talking about that when you interviewed him, that they were just surprised, right? And one of the things that I think is so great about doing the breakfast is that these people that think that people have forgotten about them find out that they're sadly mistaken, and that people really still care about what they're doing and what they're up to. And so I can't wait to get him there. I can't wait to hear about winning the Knoxville Nationals. I can't look at an orange and black race car without thinking about the Affixco car, right? So that's the kind of impact that they had on our sport back in a time when you didn't have social media and all this kind of stuff to remind you what a race car looked like. So that's a pretty list of 3 guys. And Judd Nelson may have to do a little work ahead of time before Hewitt gets there, but that's going to be a fun time.
Well, I mean, as you know, Judd gave Hewitt. I think you were away for that one. It was my one time to take control of the plane, and it was me and Hewitt. And Judd Nelson said to him, incidentally, hello, Craig Ford. Hello, Craig Ford. I'm down here in Middle Earth. He calls New Zealand Australia, and he just loves ribbing me about the fact that the Earth is really flat. So don't worry, Craig. I take on board all these things. But he did say to Judd Nelson did say to me, it's my turn to do the invocation tonight. You can ask Jack if he'd like to do it. And I went, and Kendra Jacobs went, do you think really? And I said to Jack, I go, mate, can you, because you can't ask Jack to dial it down, because he'll say to you, don't ask if you don't want the answer.
Right.
And he flat out said to me, well, I said, can you give me some idea what you might say? Because this is my only chance here. You were doing another event, and I'm like, really? I'm going to be remembered for the time that Jack Hewitt melted down the grandstand with something during the invocation. My career is gone. And all he said was, don't worry, I'm going to do the invocation. At the end, I'm just going to say, hey, all you Muslims and atheists, this ain't about you. And I was like,
oh, man.
What I'm talking about, Jack, I cannot wait. And Rick Unger, I had the great pleasure of visiting Rick at his house in Brownsburg. I just messaged him randomly and said, I just want you to remember, and it's important to do this with these guys, that you're a hero. When I was a little kid at Claremont, you raced with Jack Hewitt and those kind of guys. You're a hero. He said, if you're ever in Brownsburg, look me up. I went, I'm here.
But you've also been to Keith Kaufman's house, which I think is pretty, how do you say it? BA55 or something?
Why can't you ever say that right?
Get it right.
BAD A55.
I can't get it right.
You make a living with your words, and that one is just your kryptonite.
I cannot say it. So
I was
anyway.
So I'm gonna do that moment for a second. I went to Rick's house. Amazing. I went to Doug Wolfgang's house with Doug Clark. I went to Sammy Swindell's house. I went to Keith Kaufman's house. There are moments in my life, Tony, where I still pinch myself that I get to do things that going to the Skillman museum, with Danny Smith and Jack Hewitt and that, and even guys like Bones Bossier. Like, I'm just like, are you serious? Because you and I are still fans, Tony, right? Like, honestly, we're still the little kid looking through the fence, just going, and okay, I went to Jack Hordenshield's house with Brad Doty. Like, just like what?
Yeah.
You can hold a candle to that sort of stuff,
you can't buy those kind of memories. And I get it, what you're saying. When I tell Brad Doty this all the time, when his number comes up on my phone, when he's calling me, for a minute, I have to remind myself that this is not a spam call, right? It's like, wow, Brad Doty's calling me. How cool is that, right? And we are incredibly lucky to have the access to do some of the things that we've gotten to do, and those memories that you just spoke of there are things that, you know, if you had to give it all up today, you could go away saying things were all right. You know, I fulfilled my dream, you know.
I rode around Holmesville, Ohio in a red Corvette convertible with the mouth, Kenny Jacob.
Wow.
Like, these are things that I will never take for granted.
Yeah,
There's
awesome.
a friend of mine sent me a picture the other day. I think I know you'll appreciate this, but someone found an old program, an old Claremont Speedway program, and it was from 1986, and which, you know, nothing could be too radical about that. It's like, yeah, okay, 1986, cool. But it was the program from the opening night of the Claremont Speedway season, where just 2 weeks earlier, my papa had passed away, and I had written a letter to the Speedway saying, "Would you mind?" This is the cover of the program. I know you're going to get glasses again, but so that's the cover of the program. So right here, there's a letter from a 15-year-old kid called Wade Oranger writing to the editor to ask would they put a line in there about my papa passing away and going to the Speedway for 34 years. And well, they printed the whole letter in the program.
Wow.
And that is how I got my start. So in 1986, that's when I very first started doing anything with Speedway on any sort of a level. I was 15 years old, and I started writing articles for the program and for magazines and things like that. So, God, 2026 will be 4 years doing this. That's just insane. I'm still only 15.
Crazy. You know,
What other sport, Tony? What other sport can allow you to become friends with your heroes? Like, drag racing is the same. You are so, in our role, we are so incredibly connected to the end result that we're able to access, you know, all the top field teams and the door slammer teams and the pro stock teams and all that stuff. They have a little barricade of bollards, you know, that separate the 11,000 horsepower Exocet missile that they're tuning. And every time I just move that aside and I walk in and I go, that's a privilege.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. It's a huge privilege. And, you know, I hope I never take it for granted, right? Because it is such a privilege. But you think about it, like, think of the things, you know, you started out as a Speedway guy, right? And you were sprint cars and all that kind of stuff. And now you're calling the top door slammer races, the biggest races of the country, right? And it's not every sport. You know, if I was a football fan, I'm probably not going to get a call the Super Bowl, right? But I get a call the Super Bowl sprint car racing. That's pretty cool. I get to announce at some of the biggest Indy car races at Worldwide Technology Raceway. So those kind of things are what make our sport so great. Is you can start out really small, and whatever level of commitment you're willing to give to it, and you can make it as big as you want it to be.
And you can't just go to a Chiefs game and go, that Patrick Mahomes seems like a pretty cool cat. I'll just look him up on Facebook, maybe add him or send him a message, you know, buy a t-shirt, shake his hand. Then, you know what, let's just start becoming friends. You can become friends with your heroes in our sport. And that's what I will forever love about that.
Yeah. And our guys do it really well. I mean, you know, Rico has he posted it last night, but he has a number that fans can call and chat to, text a number to, and Rico actually responds to those things himself. It's like a community, he calls it Rico's community, and that's pretty cool. You know, it's just another way to engage those fans and give them a reason to want to come to the races. And I think that's the thing that sometimes gets lost is we as you know, announcers and promoters and drivers and teams, it's our job not only to race a good race or call a good race, but we've got to give fans a reason to come. And that's how the drivers are starting to contribute. They're allowing themselves to be much more accessible. That's why the NHRA is arguably the best ticket in motorsports. Is you buy a $33 ticket at the U.S. Nationals, sit right in the middle of the grandstands. When John Force gets done, you can walk down out of the grandstands and go stand at his car, and he'll come out there and sign your hat. You know, that's unbelievable accessibility to the giants of drag racing, right? And so that's why their crowds are so big.
You know, I was talking to Peter Murphy a couple of days ago. Murph's Peter Murphy Classic unfortunately got rained out. I didn't actually find out whether it actually rained or not, but Murph is extremely passionate about making us more broadly interesting to the 2024 spectator, that condensing the program, making it a more interactive experience. And I think, I got to experience that with Riley, Connor, and Darcy going to a Storm hockey game in Dallas, going to see the Texans beat the Buccaneers in an NFL game, getting to watch the Mavericks beat the Bulls in NBA, and then 2 amazing college football games where the Hawkeyes were able to get the job done. The fan experience at those games is where we've got to aim. I know we can't have the huge jumbotrons. I know we can't have the standard of seating. I know we can't have that incredible facility, that indoor and lighting and everything, but we've still got to aim, Tony, at drilling right into that every individual spectator in some way and connecting to them.
Yeah, you and I have had lots of talks about that very topic. And I think that's why we're doing what we're doing at Knoxville around the Nationals, right? Bringing people together and talking about how do we continue to elevate the fan experience, because what excites me about going to a race is probably not what the next 5 people will encounter or want to see. So we can't always keep things the way it was in 1986. Although, you might want to, right? You hear that on a lot of the Sirius XM NASCAR shows. It's like, well, it ain't like it used to be. Well, you're right. It's not, because we ain't racing like we used to. And, the fans are different. How we engage fans are different. So I think that's the challenge. And you're right. I love the fact that guys like Peter Murphy, he's not doing it just because he needs a job, right? He's truly trying to make it better, and how he can provide a better value to the fans at his race. And so I like seeing drivers like that get back involved in a different way in their career. Sheldon has promoted some races. Brian has been part of races. Of course, everybody knows Terry McCarl and the Front Row Challenge and what they do there. And Brad Sweet and some of the guys in the races they promote in California, not through the High Limit Series, but just other races. And Craig Delansky used to promote races, and now he's doing flat track motorcycle races. So seeing those guys get back involved is great, because they have a different perspective about what fans want to see, versus me and you, for example.
What's cool, Tony, is we've been able to share, for a long time now, mate. You and I have been friends. It goes back to, yikes, the 90s, mid-90s. But we've been able to share different parts of our cultural world. And you would recognize that this V stands for Valentine Phoenix, right? Soccer team. You actually tuned in and watched a soccer game in Australia online to watch my son Riley. And I love that you have a connection now to my boys, and also now that you've been down here to Lee Adams, to Rusty Hickman, to a Snot Block, to all these incredible Australian things.
Well, that trip, first of all, wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't have been gracious and helped me make that all come together. So, as I've told you, I'm forever thankful for that, and thankful to you for that. But getting to watch you and your boys at Riley's race when we were there, Liam's race, sorry. Watching you and the boys interact, watching the boys interact with each other, was super cool. It gave me a chance to see a different side of you that people aren't going to see when they come to a race at the next track, right? So that was really cool. And getting to talk to your boys when you weren't there, and hearing the funny dad stories they would tell me, and some that I won't share, although I would love to, was super cool to me, because it gives me a different perspective of you. But you have some badass boys. And so sprint car driving, go-kart racing, soccer ball kicking, all the things, right? It's pretty cool. So it was fun to watch the soccer game the other night, because I couldn't tell you 5 things about it other than I was watching the number 12. That's what I was watching, right? And so that was what was important to me. And getting to meet Lee Adams, Lee and Kylie, and Casey, was awesome. I feel bad that I haven't been able to keep in as close a contact with him as I would like to have, but um, just getting to hear Lee's story, and then, dude, I can walk in the patio area, the barbecue room, and you look up and there's this badass motorcycle sitting up there, right? With all these trophies. I actually saw a picture that I was scrolling through my phone, a picture of me wearing that helmet that looked like I should have been going to war in or something. But just those kind of things are super cool. You can't buy those kind of memories, and um, uh, it, I wouldn't do it any of it different. I'll say that.
I just trying to find Craig Ford just commented they can off-road too. Well, Riley was very reluctant, right? Riley would rather have been on the golf course. And I'm like, we're doing this. We're going out with Craig because I know it's going to be memorable, right? It's not going to be half-assed. We're not just going to riding over some logs and getting out the picnic blanket. We're going to be anyway. Craig did his usual, the ultimate super host thing. And I've got a picture here somewhere that really, sums up that we didn't just roll around on the twigs out there. I was taking Steve Timmis down. We were driving down to Bendigo the other day, and my partner in Methanol Moonshine, who, Timo's a very, very funny guy. We're driving through Oyen, and he's like, "Where can we get a coffee?" I'm like, "I know we go to the bakery. We go to the Oyen Bakery." He's like, "Where's that?" So we drive in there, and I immediately pull in the car park, and I flash back to when you and I were having this discussion about American politics, which I never do normally. Right? I never, ever do that. But the spot where you were starting to get animated and we were having a snot block together, which is a pastry. Now, this is a good example. When you go off-roading with Craig, right? It's not just a normal roll around the park experience. It is absolutely full on.
Yeah. He's not taking you four-wheeling on, a four-wheeler like I have in my garage. He's going to bring 4 or 5 $70,000 or $80,000 Jeeps and Broncos and other things out there, and you're going to have a big time. And like I told you earlier, Craig wears this. I wish you had a picture of it. This goofy floppy hat, and I've told him 100 times, dude, you've got to put a helmet on. You're going to flip one of those things one of these times, and you're going to hit your head. And he just laughs. He's like, nah, I won't flip one. But it's crazy. I don't get that whole rock climbing world and all that kind of business. I don't get it, but he sure has a lot of fun with it. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mate, 28 years coming up, the 28th season about to be kicking off. How are you feeling coming into that? Is it, are you more excited about it? Is there anything specifically that fires you up about this year?
I mean, 28 years is a long time to do something. And I'm excited about it. I still, for me, the first, like this week now leading up to the opening night, is probably when I get the most excited about the season, because now it's here, right? You got to get going, things happening. And I don't know that there's one thing particularly that I'm looking forward to. I'm just ready to get back to the races. I'm ready to I think we're going to have a strong car count in all 3 divisions. Our pro sprint class has really turned into a great stepping stone class. And so I know there's a couple guys that are moving up into the 360. So I'm excited about that for them. No, I wouldn't say there's one thing particular that I'm looking forward to, other than I'm just ready to go. I'm ready to get to racing again. And having watched, the Outlaws and the High Limit series on the internet the last few weeks, has got me kind of keyed up about, getting back to it. And, this time of year, I always start getting lots of friend requests on Facebook from people that I don't know, but they're race fans when I start looking into it. And a lot of people have been messaging, who's the favorite, who you think's going to be the one to watch, that kind of thing. And so I think everybody's amped up about it. And we just need some good weather. The weather we've had the last couple days has been like this. It's been fantastic. Supposed to have a pretty good storm tomorrow, but then maybe some colder weather toward the end of the week. But, we'll keep our fingers crossed that everything works out and that we get to kick it off.
This is Tony's other passion. This is his mistress right here.
Yeah.
This really badass hot rod. I had an absolute blast coming out with you and your dad and your mom, which was like super cool.
Yeah.
That was an experience I don't think that even you didn't expect. That was really, really cool.
Yeah, that car, it means a lot to me in a lot of different reasons. But as I've told you, drag racing is what started it all for me. When I was a kid, my dad drag raced, and that car that you just held up is a '71 Ford Pinto, and that was what he drag raced when I was like wee little kid, in my preteens. And then as I got older, then he sold that and bought a motorcycle and drag raced a bike for a while, and then crashed his bike doing 180 through the lights at Eddyville at the 8th mile, and then quit racing. Quit drag racing. And that's when we kind of started going to Knoxville. So I was probably around, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there, 13 maybe. But for a lot of years, we talked about, boy, it would be really cool if we had that car back again. And so for many years, probably better than 5, I looked religiously online trying to find the guy that bought the car from us. And I talked to some other people, and some folks thought he crashed it and stuff like that. And then, I don't have any kids, but if I had one, his name would be John DeCrife. And he found a car that fit the bill. It was exactly like my dad's car, with the exception of the color on the outside. And so bought it, didn't tell my dad, kind of kept it a secret, bought it, took it, and had it wrapped to identical, even down to, if you're from this area, you know who Frosty Harrington is. He did a hand pin striping lettering for a lot of years. He drew the letters so that we could scan them in and print them off. So it was absolutely identical. And so then it's been almost 2 years now, a little over 2 years, that we then, after the Nationals were over the next week, took it to Eddyville, brought my dad down there, and presented the car to him for the first time so he could see it. And that was a special time. It was really cool. And then I ran it a few times. And then last year when you were here, I took it out probably 6 or 7 times, maybe. No, not that many, maybe 5 or 6. But anyway, when you were able to come down to the drag strip with us, and my mom and stepdad were there. They both work at the racetrack now. And then my dad and stepmom were also there. And then a close family friend, Bryce Vanderwilt, was there with us, and you were there. And one of my really great friends, Larry DeCrife, who helps me work on the car, actually met him through my dad. He worked for my dad at a company here in town. And John and John's wife and girls were there. And so it was just great environment. The time was right. Having you there with us was really special, and to be able to document some of that stuff. And so yeah, the car right now is actually, I was going to do this interview in my garage so you could see it, but the garage is kind of a disaster right now because we had the car tore apart, and we've done some things to it, and getting it put back together right now. So here, probably, I would hope within the next 3 or 4 weeks, weather depending, we'll get it out, and we'll have it out for the first time this season. And I hope to maybe race it. I don't know, if I race it 6 or 7 times, that'd probably be a lot this year. I'll try to do that on Sundays or Fridays, opposite of when I'm at Knoxville, obviously. And we'll just go have some fun with it. That's what it's about.
Can't wait to see that new race suit. This is the picture that we're talking about. That's a golden helmet that Tony is wearing. It's valued at around $25,000, and you win that when you win that race, and you get a motorcycle. And up the top is basically what Tony's talking about. That's a lot of Lee's incredible bikes and gear. This weekend is the kickoff. I'm awfully proud of this one too, mate, because this was really special for me with you and my boys, with Liam's wingless at the time at Bridge. And there's so many really cool, experiences.
There were so many cool photos. I was just going to say the pub runner on the last day. That was the last day I was there. We were getting ready to leave, and we went went by Liam's work and got a picture by the motorcycle. And I can't wait to come back. And it'll have. I almost came back this past winter, but it just didn't work out. But I want to get back there. I want to see Lee and Kylie again. And boy, I would love nothing more than to have them here. I'd love to host them here at the Nationals, or even on a regular weekend. I know Kylie and Casey would love Pella.
Yeah.
So I would really love that if that were ever to happen. But one of the fun things, staying at their house was an experience in itself, right? Just because of the magnitude of who Lee Adams is, right?
Yeah.
It's like staying in Kinzer's house. And one night just getting to sit there and look at that motorcycle sitting up there and thinking about all the races that he won and the big races and just the impact is pretty cool. And so if you don't know if you're watching this and you don't know who Lee Adams is, you should Google him. It's an impressive story, and he's a remarkable guy.
Looking forward to hearing your call this weekend, mate. Blake, I think, is joining you upstairs, which is super cool. The young man, it's another one of those young apprentices that you're bringing through.
Yeah, Blake Walker. You might recognize him. He was the guy at the infield last year. As you all know, Cruggy boy. He retired. He was hoping to become the next coach at University of Nebraska at Lincoln.
You might as well.
Yeah, it couldn't have been any worse. But anyway, no. Cruggy boy has been focusing on himself, which is great. His job at My Race Pass and his personal life, and he's got a lot of good things happening. So I'm really happy for him. But Blake Walker, who was in the infield last year doing pit reporting and stuff, he's coming upstairs. He's like the Jeffersons. He's coming to the top and moving on up. And so we'll have him there. And I'm not quite ready to announce who's going to be doing the infield stuff yet, but I think some folks will be happy. Hopefully here in the next couple days, I can tell you, and then you can tell everybody if you want. But maybe that's the ploy to get you all to come this weekend. Make sure you stop by Jersey Freeze on the way there and get a Jersey Freezer. Don't get a banana split. Don't get a banana split. Get an announcer Jersey Freezer. Because part of the proceeds go to the KRCO, and it's a great cause. And Lynn Donahue, the guy that owns Jersey Freeze, you won't find a bigger race fan. So looking forward to it this weekend. And when are you going to be making your way across the water?
I am hoping to be there for the July 6th event, mate. That's my plan to
Cool.
Blake Walker just shows up right now to watch just after you've given him the big rap. Connor is there, and Connor Orange has just dropped in and said, the great Tony Bokhoven. Wow. You get the
Connor,
big
my boy. No, that's like I told you, one of the highlights of the trip was the night we spent at the racetrack with Liam's car and having your boys there. And it was fun to just step back, honestly, and watch that thing happen. And you in there trying to give some advice and talking to the people pitted next to us and watching the boys. It was great. It was great.
I know nothing about it. You know, mate, you and I are both the same. We talk about him a lot. Blake's going to head upstairs. Tony's going to rock the house. 28 years behind the mic coming up at the sprint car capital of the world. Get over to the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame, and Bill Wright and his team do such an amazing job at that incredible place. Get into A&P Pub if you can at all for a quiet little cocktail. Yes, a lemonade stand. The liquor stand underneath the bleachers is going to have Aussie lemonade, methanol moonshines, and peach shine. So there you go.
Yeah, the beach. That's what we're talking about right there.
Yeah, so we're going to step things up a bit this year and have a pop-up stand under there as well and do some tastings and all sorts of cool stuff. Hello to Linton Jeffrey, who just joined in at the very end of our coverage here as well. A world challenge winner, Huset's track champion, the main man of Vortex Race Wings. Good to see you, Linton. Tony, have a rip. Yeah, absolutely. Loves his golf too. He's a golf fanatic as well. Derek Cardwell tuned in as well. So lots of cool people watching. Have a great call, Tone. Enjoy it. I know you will. Congratulations, mate. 28 seasons. Up. Amazing.
I appreciate it. Look forward to you getting here and look forward to catching you on some of the replays doing the top door slammers and the drag race stuff. I enjoy that quite a bit. And I'm really excited that you get to do those things. So say hi to your pops. Say hi to Lee and Kylie. And hi to the boys.
Done you, mate. Good to talk to you, buddy.
See ya.
See you, mate.